Did I enjoy this episode of WandaVision? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. Can you repeat the question? Welcome to The Watcher. I am your collier, Tom Pot, and I just watched episode 6 of WandaVision, and let's talk about that. First of all, in the bumper, as I referenced, this episode was sort of a Malcolm in the Middle flavour, which is weird, right? Because I think a lot of people expected this to be a 90s episode, and it kind of was in some ways, but in other ways it wasn't at all. I kind of leaning towards this might be like a mid 2000s episode. So, because Malcolm in the Middle #1 aired in the year 2000, and in your head you kind of think, oh well, what'll the episode title be? I was thinking it might be like The One with a Friends reference maybe, because it was like the defining 90s sitcom. But no, it's the all new Halloween Spooktacular. And there's a few other things in the show that really weren't 90s. And in my head, I was like, why would they do that? And to be honest, it makes sense, because as much as on the surface it's, WandaVision is referencing classic sitcoms from the era, if you look at the sitcoms they're referencing, it's generally sitcoms that have that kind of family unit, traditional American family unit. And a lot of the 90s sitcoms that were so successful, like, say, Friends, as I mentioned, Seinfeld, Frasier, they weren't really about that traditional family mold, whereas something like Malcolm in the Middle was, as much as it was a dysfunctional family. So it kind of makes sense. And when you hear they're going to do Modern Family in a few weeks, presumably, or maybe next week, that makes sense as well, because it is that family unit again. So it kind of makes sense to me why they did this. And certainly, if we're talking about dysfunction, the Maximoff household at the moment certainly is that, because as the title suggests, it's Halloween. Now, some people also mentioned that they could have done like Married with Children, even though that started in the late 80s. It's probably a good thing they didn't go for Married with Children, because we would have got that obnoxious hooting and hollering as soon as they saw Elizabeth Olsen in her outfit. I mean, what do you say about that? It's probably for the best. Which is, this is one of the guilty pleasures of having a Halloween episode, because they just were able to just go with the costumes with whatever way they wanted. So she has the traditional headdress and the kind of cape and all this stuff. She even has the accurate tights that Scarlet Witch wore, which was so great to see. It was so much fun. And what I really liked as well is that they took the time to try explain why they would be wearing these costumes. For most of them, they did anyway. So why is she dressed like that? She's a Sokovian fortune teller. Perfectly makes sense. Harder to explain was Vision's costume, but they did find a reason. I'm not sure if it was necessarily a sound one, because he looks absolutely ridiculous, kind of. But it was very fun. And he also was credited as The Vision, like he would be in the comics in the credits, because he's wearing his comic accurate costume. So that was a nice little touch there. He's apparently a Mexican wrestler, a lucha libre star. Huh. I'm not sure if that holds up the scrutiny, but it was lovely seeing him in his costume. And of course, the whole family actually got to wear their costumes, including the visiting uncle Pietro and our two kids, which means we officially now have costumes for Speed and Wiccan. And they didn't really explain Quicksilver's costume, but they don't really need to, I guess. It's just like, he's fast, therefore he has a lightning bolt. And his hair is exactly like it is in the comics as well, which is so awesome. I speculated last week that when they showed the kind of colours that the boys were wearing, that it wasn't like Speed's colours, it was closer to Quicksilver's colours, and that they might kind of retroactively go with that in the MCU, just given Quicksilver's colours. And they kind of did that here with the costumes, seemingly, because he's basically just dressed as Quicksilver, whereas Wiccan has a very accurate costume now. So that was cool to see. Over the course of the episode, we also see they do in fact both have powers. We have official confirmation, as if we needed it. But yeah, Speed is running around. Wiccan, at one point, can hear things and see things far from where he should be able to. But I don't want to say what yet, but we will get into it now. Now, I will say this as well. Last week, I did the episode so that we did the Hex story, and then we did what Sword we're doing. We sort of have to split it up again, because in the Hex, we kind of have dual storylines for a change, because Vision is starting to question the world around him. And we mentioned at the end of last week, it really looked like Scarlet Witch and Vision were about to get into it, and then the doorbell rang to kind of break up that tension. That tension is still there, as the boys tell us when they narrate to the camera, much like Malcolm does in Malcolm in the Middle, that basically things are a little bit tense. But what's fun is that Vision is playing Wanda's game, or whoever's game it is, in that he's kind of giving a sitcom reason. He's saying, I'm at the neighborhood watch. I won't be able to be here for Halloween. Bye. So that leaves Uncle Pietro and Wanda, our two twins, to go with the boys trick-or-treating, which I have the shot behind me in the video version. I just love this shot so much of just finally getting to see the twins together in comic accurate costumes in front of the cinema like they do. I also love the shot for a few reasons. Number one, I don't know if people noticed this yet, but look at the door of the cinema and tell me that is not the sword logo. It absolutely looks like it. I don't believe that can just be a big coincidence. Now let's talk about the films that are showing in Westview cinema lately. I mean, they're a bit behind the times possibly, but then again, their times they're all over the place, so who cares? This is another thing that made me go, maybe we're actually in the early 2000s. They're watching The Incredibles, which was 2004, and The Parent Trap, which I believe was 1998, I think. Certainly was the late 90s anyway. So, Incredible one is a pretty obvious one. Hey, it's a superhero family. The Maximovs are a superhero family. Straightforward enough. Then we have The Parent Trap, and specifically it's the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap, as you can see in the poster far in the back there. Not that is necessarily a major distinction anyway. Lindsay Lohan played both twins in the remake of that. Is this some sort of suggestion? Okay, basically, the plot of The Parent Trap, in case I can't believe we're now explaining the plot of Parent Trap in the show, but the plot of The Parent Trap is two twins kind of launch a scheme and kind of play both sides so that they can reunite their divorced parents. So we have two twins here. That could be one thing, but I think it's more likely that it could be a suggestion of like identical twins that look alike. We have two Quicksilvers. Is this some sort of a trap? Is the Quicksilver that we're being given here not really who he says he is? And that is a question that comes up all the way. Is this some sort of a trap? Not a parent trap, but I was going to say a Wanda trap, but that's terrible. That's a terrible line. I'm sorry. We actually did get a look at Aaron Taylor Johnson in this episode. He appeared in the recap being shot as he did in Age of Ultron. So it was interesting. That is probably the first time we've seen him in the MCU. Yeah, it is, I believe, since he was killed off. So there's also an interesting thing here where Wanda at one point looks at him and he is much in the same way we had an episode where Vision was dead when she looked at him. Quicksilver was dead, but it was Evan Peters dead, but he had the bullet wounds that he got when Aaron Taylor Johnson was shot. So that's interesting. There's also a few cute Easter eggs. One of them was, of course, he mentions Kick-Ass, and then she goes, Kick-Ass. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Evan Peters were both in Kick-Ass. They share the screen together, and now they're both Quicksilvers, and seemingly somehow in the same universe, which a lot of questions to be asked there. And those questions are asked, by the way, because Evan Peters and Wanda, I don't know why I use an actor's name and then a character's name, Quicksilver and Wanda kind of question each other a little bit here. And I don't think either of them are really sure. Or else Quicksilver, Pietro, is a very good actor. If it's Pietro at all. Dun, dun, dun. Right. Let's kind of dig into this. Number one, there's a few questions that kind of Wanda tests him with. At one point, she's like, hey, what was the name of that guy that stole your shoes again? And he's like, you're testing me. I mean, if it was the actual Quicksilver, he could answer it, but we don't even know. A, is this the same Quicksilver? B, has he been just recast? Is this a multiverse Quicksilver? In other words, is this literally the same Quicksilver from the X-Men series brought over? Or is it someone else? Which is possibly something I might be leaning towards after this episode. Because it seems like Pietro is questioning Wanda a lot as well. First of all, she's like, why do you look different? How did you get here? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, well, I just heard you calling and I came. And I don't know why I look different. Okay, well, it's true. He might not know why he looks different. But he does ask her a lot of other questions. Like, he asks her, for example, well, I guess he kind of gets her trust. He's kind of like, how did you do this? This is really amazing. Whereas a lot of people have kind of been questioning the morality of what she's done. He's kind of like, I'm just impressed. This is, what you're doing is fine. You know, I think what you're doing is okay. He's trying to kind of gain her trust and find out, could she really be behind it? And Wanda, interestingly, said she isn't aware of how it happened. Again, whether or not this is that she kind of started doing it and it got out of control. She just remembers feeling alone. So, is she under some sort of influence? Has she been under influence when she stole Vision's body, even? That's kind of the question. that we're going to have to ask ourselves here. That's mostly what happened with the Wanda storyline. It was mostly just kind of some cute moments, some cool moments of her interacting with Quicksilver, if it is Quicksilver at all. Now, the big kind of Tom's theories is, could this Quicksilver be planted by Sword? Is this just somebody who was put into the hex that Wanda kind of had to retrofit in her own head, and she's not even sure how it's working, and they're taking advantage of that confusion to put an agent in there who can question her about what's going on? Maybe, maybe not. I think it would kind of be, I don't know, it'd be pretty lame if they brought in Quicksilver, and it was just happened to be Evan Peters playing another kind of character that she believes Quicksilver. Like, that would be a kind of a letdown. I think the problem is, like, if this isn't a multiverse thing, you run the risk of really kind of annoying people with it. So it's kind of hard to tell. Other things that are kind of hard to tell is what the hell Vision is thinking at the moment, because he has gone to do investigating. As much as he said he's not in the neighborhood watch, you know what, man? You're going around the neighborhood peeping on people and making sure they're not getting into trouble. You're on the neighborhood watch, my friend. Welcome. He had a very interesting plot in this episode, because I think the best analogy you can kind of have for this is like video games. Like, he kind of was like had the main story with Wanda, and then he left, and the further he got away from that, he's seeing NPCs, non-playable characters, non-player characters, whatever you want to call them, and they're kind of doing routine tasks, like they're kind of like programmed to do. And it was actually kind of messed up. Like, there was a lady who was kind of hanging out or washing, but she's just doing it in an infinite loop, and we just see a tear running down her face, like she's trapped and she's stuck doing this. And I don't know, was that more disturbing, or was it more disturbing that the further he got away, very far from Wanda, people were just frozen in time. It was like a mother watching her kids go to the door for trick or treating, but she was just standing there motionless, and so were the kids. And when he tried to actually question the woman, he didn't get an answer. At that point, he gets rid of his traditional garb, unfortunately. So sorry, comic book nerds. He loses the Vision outfit and goes back to his more film version outfit from the Avengers. And he sees a car, and he goes out into that car, and wouldn't you know it, it's our old friend Agnes, who is appropriately dressed as a witch. Some people are suggesting this is Agatha Harkness. That would certainly be appropriate. I heard someone else suggest as well. I think she mentioned the date of her anniversary, I think it was, and it was like the date of the Salem witch trials. So maybe you're just giving us like, they're either, there's some stuff in this, right? And I'll talk about the Satan stuff in a minute, because I'm still all aboard the Satan train. The thing is, they're either hitting some of these notes really hard, or they're misdirecting so much that any other conclusion could be disappointing. So Agnes is kind of interesting, because she is somewhat able to answer Vision's questions while in the trance. She's like, "Where are you going?" And she's like, "I'm going to the town square, but I've gotten lost." And he's like, "Well, you've lived here your whole life. How would you get lost?" And he's like, "Huh, that makes sense." So he taps her on the temples, much like he did Norm in the past episode, and she kind of snaps out of it, and she's like going on about how she's under a trance, and this person is doing this to me, and but she recognizes Vision. And what is interesting is that she's like, "You're one of the Avengers," and he's like, again, of course he doesn't remember, so he's like, "What? I don't. What's that? What's the Avengers?" And then, very disturbingly, she says, essentially, well, she blames Wanda first of all, by the way, for as being kind of responsible, and she asks, "Am I dead?" And he's like, "Why would you be dead?" And she says, "Because you were," which we saw in some of the trailers. And then she cackles wildly, very much like a witch, and chants "dead," which again isn't like what a normal person would do. But then again, if your mind was messed up so much, maybe you would react kind of strangely. So again, is Agnes who she says she is? That is the big question that we're still asking. Or is she something to do with Mephisto, Satan, the devil, all that stuff? And I don't know for sure. No one does, unless it's leaked by now, which there is apparently more leaks this week. Just avoid the internet, folks, except for this video. Only come to this video, give it a like, give it a subscribe, and do nothing else, right? Here's another thing I found interesting, if we're leading to this devil thing, right? So Vision meets her here at a crossroads. She met the devil at the crossroads, a classic kind of trope of meeting the devil at the crossroads. So it's either a very clever misdirect, an Easter egg, or I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the devil at the crossroads is kind of a thing if you were doing the deal with the devil. Also, I want to point out just here a few other instances where they reference the devil. Quicksilver at one says unleash hell to the kids. More specifically, though, he calls them demon spawn, I think it was. Which, yeah, you know what? That's exactly what they are in the comics. Basically, the devil makes these kids possible. They would be demon spawn. And it's things like that that made me go like, are they hitting that drum so hard that it's not it, or are they hoping that you wouldn't, that if you weren't like a hardcore fan, that you just wouldn't notice until you kind of go back and rewatch? That's interesting. I also just want to point out a few things. Just kind of this is just kind of clever, but if you didn't catch it, Wanda says to Speed when he's running with his brother, "Don't go beyond Ellis Road or Ellis Avenue." And here the crossroads is at Ellis Avenue because obviously she's saying that because beyond Ellis Avenue is the end of the hex. Also, Ellis Avenue. Ellis is the name of the president in the MCU, although I've got to imagine his term is up by now because he was the president in Iron Man 3. I don't know if he got dusted or not. I mean, if he had dusted, like if he comes back 5 years later, is he like, hey, I had 2 years left of my term? Or are they like, no, sorry, Ellis. Either way, I'm surprised you kind of see the Easter egg because that was a nod to Warren Ellis, who wrote the Extremist story that Iron Man 3 was based on. And Warren Ellis is kind of a piece of shit, seemingly. So, yeah, I don't think you'll see many Easter eggs like that going forward. That's where we're going to leave Vision for the moment. He's about at the crossroads, about to go beyond Ellis Avenue, possibly beyond the hex. I don't know why I'm giving suspense. You've probably seen the episode, but I'm going to go now to what is going on with our sword friends. Here's the thing, right? Have fans come up with a name for this group yet? Darcy Lewis, Jimmy Woo, and Monica Rambeau. I feel like there needs to be like a name for this trio. Like I'm calling them the Wu-Tang Clan for now, just because I'm sorry to leave the two women out, but it's not easy to work upon with Darcy or Monica. But at the moment, I'm calling them the Wu-Tang Clan for short. Okay, so you can call them the Wu-Tang Clan, Ton like photon, which we might get to in a sec. So what's going on with them? Well, we pick up with them where we left last week, where they try to fire on Wanda, and they're like basically, hey, Hayward is saying we need to kill her. This will end all this, and they're saying you don't know that. What happens if you kill them and that affects everyone in there? Blah blah blah. Not blah blah blah. I didn't mean to dismiss all those innocent people dying potentially. They're not really sure, and because of that tension, he says get them out of here, and they're escorted off the sword camp. But they beat up the people escorting them. Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. Boom. It's worth now. That's their name now. Okay, I don't care if they get a name for fans later on. It's the Wu-Tang Clan, and they ain't nothing to fuck with. So what happens then is they kind of set up their own sort of base, which I mean it was never going to last very long anyway because they're just on premises. But it kind of is. It's kind of done at the end of this episode anyway, so we get what we need out of it. And we get a few interesting revelations here. First of all, Darcy's a hacker apparently, so I'll believe it. Whatever. What is very interesting here is that when she breaks in to what Sword's data is, they mention that they have her blood on file. Okay? And she mentions very specifically that messing with the hex, going into the hex multiple times, she says, which I'm kind of like, did she go in multiple times? I think she's only gone in the once. But being in the hex has somehow altered her molecular structure. Okay, which is pretty interesting for so many reasons. We're going to get into. So number one, I guess they really had to bite their tongue and not say it's mutated your cell structure, because is this the first hint of mutants in the MCU? Now, there's a few things we need to question here. Number one, okay, they say, I was just trying to find the exact information. They said that it's rewriting your cells on a molecular level. Now, here's the thing. Number one, the question is this just happening to Monica, or does this happen to everyone in Westview? In other words, is everyone in Westview going to have some sort of ramification from this? Now, the other thing we should ask is Monica in the comics becomes Photon, as I mentioned earlier. Is this how she becomes Photon? Possibly. But again, does that mean everyone in Westview is going to have superpowers, or is it something in her DNA already? That would be actually something quite like the Inhumans, to be honest. But again, the Inhumans have been kind of shunned now that they have X-Men back, and also because that TV series sucked. So the other thing is, at the end of this episode, Darcy is sucked into it. Please don't give Darcy powers. I mean, I don't want this to be like the Arrowverse, where all of a sudden everyone is a superhero. So yeah, again, is it something that's inside you? And the bigger question is, right? And we're kind of skipping to the end a little bit here. If the hex expands, um, and let's say for argument's sake, the hex expands and it sends out a wave all across the universe, which alters people with a certain thing in their DNA. Let's say it mutates it. Do you see what I'm getting at? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Could this be the first introduction, an explanation for how mutants are going to come in to the MCU? And if it is, who better than Wanda to introduce them, in my opinion? We also got a little bit of an allusion again to Monica's falling out with Captain Marvel. He says, "I know your history with Captain Marvel." I've seen some people suggest that being around Captain Marvel might have given Maria Rambeau cancer. I don't know. That seems like it could be a bit of a jump, but it's certainly possible. There's a lot of time to fill in there between Captain Marvel and WandaVision, and Captain Marvel in the general MCU timeline, to be honest. So yeah, interesting stuff. What we should also point out is that in hacking, we find out one of the things that Hayward was trying to keep hidden, and that was apparently a project called Cataract. Cataract is a lens in your eye. Generally, when people refer to them, they're talking about it getting kind of cloudy where you can't see. But also, you can kind of get cataract surgery to improve your vision. The only thing we can definitively say is cataract must have a connection with vision. They love their puns and their abbreviations, those sword and shield lads do. Is this potentially? I was speculating last week that Sword had taken Vision's body to rework him as a weapon. Is that what we were seeing here? Was this what they are trying to hide? That they want to reclaim Vision and use him as a weapon? Are they kind of okay with this happening? Because they want Vision's body. Well, not okay with happening. Do they want to get Vision's body back to turn him into a weapon? Which is sort of an argument that was once that they often have thrown that before at kind of a debate about Superman. Can Superman be a U.S. agent because he landed in America, he's government property, blah, blah, blah. And there's actually a very Superman-y shot in this when Vision kind of goes up very, very high into the clouds and listens to the people of Westview. So I don't know. Certainly, Cataract is linked to Vision. Is it a project about improving vision, fixing your vision, like if you got cataract surgery? That remains to be seen, but we'll certainly get an answer. Speaking of Vision, last we left him, he was trying, or considering at least, getting out of the hex. And Jesus, he shouldn't have tried to do it because it looked damn painful, sir. We see him getting chunks torn out of him. Just in agony. It was really how many times have you used the word distressing talking about WandaVision? And certainly this is up there. Wiccan hears him, by the way. That was the confirmation of his superhero powers. And yeah, it was really distressing. Now, in doing this, Darcy kind of convinces him to try help him, and she's handcuffed. I know said chain cuffed. That's not a thing. Handcuffed to a car or something, and because of that, she gets sucked into the hex. Because to kind of save him, Wanda expands the hex. She does the glowing eyes shtick, which I thought we all agreed that was my thing. Wanda, I started glowing eyes. God damn it. Yeah. So to expand the hex, and in doing that, he comes back into the hex and seems fine. It seems like he's kind of healed from that, but of course, it also absorbs Darcy. A lot of sword agent. It doesn't seemingly. We don't see it get Jimmy and Monica. They seem to be quite far away, so we're assuming they're fine. Hayward got away as well, seemingly, and he can't contact any of his agents, who now have been turned into some sort of traveling circus to be retrofitted. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. I also want to mention that Vision still had the Mind Stone in his head, which is interesting. The question is, does that mean the Mind Stone is going to continue to exist when he leaves the Hex? The other question is, does this mean Vision cannot survive outside the Hex, or is it just because there was a spell that because Wanda didn't want him to leave that he was hurt? Which, boy, that's fucked up if that's true. I don't know. Is the Mind Stone going to, again? The Mind Stone is linked to all these characters. The Mind Stone was in Loki's scepter, which is what got them their powers, and now, of course, it's in Vision's head that gave him sentience. So, is the Mind Stone going to continue to exist outside the Hex? Is Vision going to continue to exist outside the Hex? From here, it didn't look like it. Does that mean he's definitively dead? We don't know. Does that mean he won't return to the mainline MCU at some point? Who knows? It's kind of hard to tell. But that's pretty much where we have to leave the episode, because that's pretty much all there is to say, to be honest. It was interesting. It was one of those episodes where like I kind of had to ask a lot of questions after it. I think the big question here is, who is Pietro and what is his true nature? What is going to happen with Darcy? And still, what's Agnes's deal, bro? So before we go, we'll talk about the ad. We talked about all these ads before, how it was kind of like Wanda's trauma. This one was a bit less clear cut, but it was a cool kind of claymation ad where we saw what looked like a street shark.
Half shark, half man, fighting evil, that's the plan. Street sharks.
Come out of the water and hand a kid on a desert island who was seemingly starving a yogurt that was called Yo Magic, like your magic, I guess. And he's trying to open it, and he fails to open it, and he dies as a result. And the tagline for this ad was what was it? Magic for survivors. Yo Magic, magic for survivors. So that kind of has a few different things. If we connect it to Wanda's trauma directly, a lot of people seemingly died from the experimentation that gave Wanda and Pietro their powers, but she survived. Magic is for survivors. You're a survivor. You get magic. Hooray. Is it a reminder that magic can't really save people, in that the kid has magic but still dies anyway? Is it kind of an analogy for someone trying to feed off her magic, because the kid was trying to eat her magic, and I suppose the shark has it as well? Is it an analogy for Wanda herself? Wanda kind of felt like she was dying alone, and then something possibly evil. I mean, we could normally kind of consider sharks to be evil. That's not me being, I don't know, sharkophobic or anything. Is that the term? But like traditionally, they're kind of seen as like dangerous or evil. Pops up out of nowhere, and he's like, "Hey, how about some magic?" That could be like what the devil did to Wanda, offering him magic to bring someone back from the dead. But if that is the case, that's terrifying, because the person who was given magic couldn't control it and ended up dead. Oh, sorry, Wanda. I hope you don't end up being dead. So that's that. That was another episode of WandaVision. It was an interesting episode. I kind of feel like, was it a good episode? It was. It just wasn't like a kind of a necessarily completely satisfying episode. It was an episode that felt like a part of a whole, I'll say. It felt like it's planting seeds for the upcoming finale, as it were. It wasn't like one that kind of felt contained and satisfying. It was one that sort of set up a few more suggestions before we come into the end game, if you'll pardon the pun. Now I'm like someone who works with sword with a pun. That's where we leave it. What did you think of this episode of WandaVision? Who do you think Pietro is? Is he who he says he is? Is he who we all kind of hope he is? Who the fuck is he? Aside from that, what do you think is going on with Agnes? And what are your theories? We hear Tom's theories. I want to hear your theories down below. Let me know. And if you did enjoy this, please like and subscribe and come back next week, because remember, I'll be watching. Take care. Hey, if you enjoyed this, why not give this video a like and remember to subscribe. There's podcasts here on the channel. I just launched a new one where I talked about the Wakanda series, Blade getting a writer, and a lot more besides it, including the big deal at HBO Max. Could it rival Disney Plus someday? We'll have to just wait and see. Regardless, there's lots more content on this channel or on the podcast feed if you're finding this elsewhere. But regardless, I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you come back, because remember, can't spell cult without you.